of the American Journal is on, and I'm very happy to welcome my guest right off the bat. Karlyn Borysenko can be found at decodetheleft.com, karlyn.substack.com. That's KARLYN.substack.com. She tracks and spies on the left and actually delivers what they're thinking, what they're planning, what they're saying in their private chats. It's really important and powerful work. Karlyn, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Harrison.
My pleasure. I've been meaning to get you on. I mean, this is your time to shine. What can you tell us about what's going on in Minneapolis and Minnesota at large?
The situation is really bad. And I got to be honest, I kind of thought the winter weather would deter them at the beginning. But now what I'm beginning to understand is like the left is building so much momentum behind the anti-ICE activism that I just don't know what can stop them. And one of the interesting things, Harrison, and I've been listening into anti-ICE organizing calls across a lot of different groups on the far left almost every single day for weeks. The left is happy and they think they're winning, and they are more excited than ever. And you have to understand, I've been following the far left for about 5 years now. I have never heard them this happy and this excited and this motivated, and they really think they have all the momentum on their side. And I got to tell you, with the way the Trump administration is responding to them, it kind of seems like Trump is very weak in this situation. He doesn't really have a grasp on what is going to be required to stop the problem. We are only going to see more protesting, more noise demonstrations outside of these hotels that we've been seeing. And the really scary part is this is not just in Minnesota. The far left right now is trying to work to export all of the different strategies that they're using in Minnesota nationwide. So we already saw hotel protests show up last night in New York. We're starting to see it show up in California. I know it's showing up in Ohio, Missouri, South Carolina. I've even seen ads for Florida, Texas, and even Montana. And so what the far left doing is being phenomenally successful in Minnesota. And it's going to be very dangerous if the Trump administration doesn't get a handle on this to stop it.
How do you think they should get a handle? I mean, because I'm not surprised by that. If I was on the left, I would also be feeling ebullient right now. Like I'd be feeling like we were winning because obviously they are. I mean, I don't think there's any debate on that. What would you do? Let's start with the solutions. How would you approach this from if you were Trump?
They need to go in with overwhelming force. That's the only way I can think to describe this. That is what the left understands is overwhelming force. So, for example, I've been watching these hotel protests where they're going and they're finding the hotels that ICE officials are staying in, and they're going and banging pans and making all sorts of noise outside these hotels. Here's what happens, Harrison. The left goes and makes a ton of noise for hours. They break things, they destroy property, and then the police show up and they make an announcement saying, hey, you kids better cut it out and go home. And they don't cut it out and they keep going. And then the police say, hey, you guys, we're going to arrest you if you don't cut it out. And then, there's some tear gas fired, and maybe the police even catch a few people and put them in handcuffs. But then what happens immediately after that is the police let them go. They literally let them go. They're not really arresting anyone. They let them go, and then the entire group reconvenes and starts making noise again until the police show up again. And it's like, until these people are put in jail and kept off the streets and prevented from doing activism, we are only going to see this continue to expand and grow and get much worse than it already is.
Again, it seems like an inescapable conclusion from the trajectory that things are going now. And of course, it just, when you really think about it, it becomes like overwhelming when you realize, like, even if you arrest him, the judges are probably going to let him out. The prosecutors are probably on their side. I mean, what do you do when the entire local government seems to be hijacked by these radical groups? I mean, the Signal chat has revealed a lot of people very close to not just the local city government, but the state government are actively involved, actively communicating with the rioters, and of course, helping them out however they can. So, I mean, really, this is a very, very difficult situation to deal with if you're trying to deal with it through the proper channels of the local government. They're not gonna capitulate. I mean, they're not gonna help, right?
No, they're absolutely not going to help. And that's why I say Trump needs to go in with overwhelming force. And it gets even scarier than that, because a lot of these groups, I mean, this organizing has been going on for over a year. And so we're only going to see it get worse.
More on the other side. Quick commercial break. We'll be back in 90 seconds. More with Karlyn Borysenko, decodetheleft.com, karlyn.substack.com. You got to listen to these people. They're telling you the truth when they say they're trying to overthrow the country and want to kill you. They're not lying. They lie about everything else.
You're tuned in to the American Journal with your host, Harrison Smith. Watch it live right now at band.video.
back, ladies and gentlemen. My guest is Karlyn Borysenko, decodetheleft.com, karlyn.substack.com. Again, Karlyn, I can't encourage people enough to go follow you on X, go to decodetheleft.com, karlyn.substack.com. You do such important work identifying what's happening in the leftist chats, what they're actually saying to each other. And again, I was saying before you came on, when it comes to May Day, things like that, I feel like you and I are sitting alone up on a ridge watching a train barrel towards a crash. And we're 2 years away, and we're going to sit here for 2 years going, slow the train down. You've got to stop it. Why does nobody care about this? Why are the Republicans so incapable of grasping what the left is doing and why they're doing it and how they're doing it? It's like we are constantly surprised with the most obvious stuff. How do we get through to people, Karlyn?
I don't know, Harrison, but what I will say, I mean, the good news is that there are more people paying attention than ever. And I do think that people are starting to wake up to the fact that this is a problem. Perhaps they're waking up a bit too late, and I wish they would have woken up years ago, but it is what it is. But on that May Day point, I want to tell you this. So because the left is so motivated and so energized, I think they might be actually trying to move up that schedule for May Day. So of course, we saw the first mass general strike that the left tried to do in Minneapolis last week on Friday. They did try to export that nationwide with a certain amount of success. They're going to be doing another general strike this Friday coming up, but the far left is already planning for May Day 2026, which is on May 1st. It is a Friday, of course, and they are already planning to do a big nationwide, hopefully for them, prolonged mass strike where they are literally trying to shut down the economy across all sectors. And by all sectors, I mean the teachers unions are directly involved in this. They want to shut down the schools, not only by doing student walkouts, but by organizing with the teachers unions. The grocers association and unions are involved in this. The auto workers are involved. The airline unions are involved. The AFL-CIO, the SEIU, the Teamsters are involved. Like pretty much every major union is going to be involved in these mass protests. And that's honestly, if Republicans want something they can do, what really needs to happen is there need to be congressional hearings into the political organizing activities of the labor unions, because the labor unions are not about helping employees. They are about far left organizing. And the proof of this is just look at any major leftist protest. The main organizers in all of them are the labor unions. And so I think we are in for a heck of a May Day 2026. I've been on multiple organizing calls where they're already starting to plan for May Day 2026. I was just on one last night with the Sunrise Movement, where they literally have an entire manual that I will be releasing on my Substack today about their organizing plans. The Sunrise Movement is the same organization doing the noise protests outside the hotels in Minneapolis. So it's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Again, it's just so frustrating that it would be so easy to do something or anything about this, and we just can't get anything done. But man, it must be nice to be a leftist. I mean, it's a win-win for them, right? They get to sort of move their schedule up. They'll try this on May 1st, 2026, and hey, maybe it's snowballs, maybe it becomes something really big and it becomes successful and they take down the government, or it's just a practice run and they get to sort of train their networks and figure out, pros and cons, because obviously nothing's going to happen to them. This is just a training run. It either succeeds, wonderful, and if it doesn't, they get to try again next year. Again, what do we have to do to get people to understand? And tell me if you disagree. We have to intervene. There's no convincing these people to stop. There's no meeting some of these people's demands and they'll be satisfied. We have to physically intervene, stop these people, break up their networks. That's the only option as far as I see it. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong at all. They are not going to stop. They are not going to be deprogrammed. There's no reasoning with these people. And I think the very first step, honestly, is that people have got to start taking the far left a lot more seriously than they've been taking them over the past several years. And this is my constant consternation. I know it's yours too, is that people on the right look at the left and they think they're stupid, they're mentally ill, they don't have jobs. Well, I'm sorry, they do have jobs. They control the labor unions. How do they control the labor unions if they don't have jobs, you idiots? And it's like every time people say stuff like this, they are perpetuating these falsehoods that make it very easy to dismiss the left. This is not a bunch of angry college students that are going to grow out of it. These are people who have been indoctrinated into this ideology since they were 5 years old. They are not growing out of it this time. And by the way, we have an entire teaching pool and two major teachers unions that are also indoctrinated into this ideology and are constantly perpetuating it in the public schools and are facilitating all of this. Even the University of Minnesota last week, I would love to see Trump defund the University of Minnesota, because quite frankly, the University of Minnesota is responsible for a lot of these students that are outside doing this. And guess what? Last Friday for the general strike, over 200 professors at the University of Minnesota canceled classes, held anti-ICE organizing training, and did proactive activism to book out hotel rooms at Hilton hotels so that ICE officers couldn't book them instead. So the colleges and universities are complicit, and Trump would be well advised to pull all federal funding from the University of Minnesota if he wants to shut it down.
Well, there you add it to the list of things that he could do with a stroke of a pen that he's not doing for some inexplicable reason. And you're right. People don't take the left seriously. Like when the Signal chat came out. I mean, it's shocking what's in there. It's crazy that the people, the former campaign manager for Tim Walz is one of the organizers. Like what was exposed, I'm not downplaying, but it's not exactly a surprise for people like you and I. Like, of course, these Signal chats exist. Of course, this is the level of organization that they have. Of course, they're sending manuals out showing how to intervene with ICE. This should not be a surprise, and it should not be independent reporters that are having to discover this stuff and put the FBI's feet to the fire. They're not doing the research. What is your take on the Signal chat? Was this a singular big thing, or is this just one of many chats that you think we need to be concerned about?
Oh, Harrison, I've been reporting on the Signal chats for almost a year. The Signal chats were not a surprise at all. And just because it was a surprise to mass conservatives, it doesn't mean that it hasn't been going on. This organizing has been going on for over a year now, ever since Trump took office. And I'll give you one better, and this is on my Substack right now. I just posted it this morning. Months ago, I actually found an archive of far left propaganda in the form of zines that are being used to facilitate ICE reporting and these Signal groups all over the country. An interesting thing about these zines is they all listed local hotlines that people could actually call to report ICE sightings in their neighborhoods. What happens when you call to report to a hotline is that the report gets facilitated out to the Signal group. So it's not just Minnesota. It's like there is a nationwide network of hotlines and organizations that are sponsoring these hotlines that people can actually go to look to where they are the ones facilitating all of this anti-ICE organizing and the reporting into the Signal groups in the first place. Just this morning on my Substack, which is Karlyn, Karlyn.substack.com, I posted an entire database of the propaganda that's being distributed in the real world all over the country, a list of all the hotlines, and a list of all of the organizations that are sponsoring those hotlines. And I'm calling for the public's help here. I need help in going through all this stuff because I have been trying to get this information into the hands of journalists for months. I personally don't have time to track all this stuff down, but I promise you, if people go to my Substack and they find that list of organizations that is linked in that article, they will be able to track down who is funding these Signal groups, who's coordinating these Signal groups, and how nationwide across all major cities these people are working together to impede the operations of ICE. And that image right there is a picture. That is actually me finding one of these zines in the real world. I found that when I was undercover the last time in San Francisco. And so I know this information is being used in the real world. I know these hotlines are coordinated, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of them are being funded by local and state government.
Of course they are. I mean, when we know that they're involved, I just retweeted one of the videos that you did saying, I know how all the anti-ICE Signal groups are connected nationwide and how to find their funding sources. Again, we obviously can't rely on the Republicans to do anything about this. I mean, it sucks because they could so easily, and that is the obvious solution. Short of that, what can people do? Like, because I've been encouraging people to go do what Cam Higbee did, what you do, go find these Signal chats, publish them. It's like, why not? What is there to lose? But I also, I don't want to be encouraging people to do something if, it's going to get them doxxed or whatever. So how do you do this safely? How do you, find your way into these groups? Because I think this is something everybody listening to us could be doing. I mean, just do it on your lunch break, find these Signal chats or find these social media groups and make an account and join them and just see what they're up to. Like, it's so easy. I don't think there's any risk. Is there a risk in this? What do people need to know? And how do people do their own research? Because we cannot rely on mainstream media. We cannot rely on the Republicans. It's up to us, folks. We got to get involved. How do people do that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Harrison. I think everyone can do this research. And in fact, in my community, through my YouTube channel and my Substack, we are actually coordinating with many people in my community who do go undercover to gather this information. They go into the Signal groups. Some of them sign up for far left groups in their neighborhood. They go to their meetings. They track everything they're doing. They make it available to the public so that we can all see. Anyone can learn how to do this. But the thing of it is the first thing people need to do is learn how to speak the language of the left. You have to learn what their language actually means, because because they do speak in a completely different language. That's what I teach on my YouTube channel every single day. I have free resources on my Substack to be able to help people out to learn the language, because if you don't understand what they're saying, you're not going to be able to articulate the correct information. I do want to warn people, though, there are different spectrums of the left where some groups are not dangerous at all, and it's not going to put you in any harm to try to infiltrate them. But when we're talking about the far left, and the far left are the ones doing the majority of this anti-ICE organizing, it can be very dangerous to go to these groups in person, especially if you don't know how to speak their language, because they're going to be able to figure out who you are very quickly. And so I would really caution people to be very careful. I've heard from multiple conservatives that want to go to these anti-ICE protests and they want to disrupt them or do pro-ICE protesting. And while I understand the inclination, people also have to understand that they will physically assault you. They are very hyped up. We've seen them physically assault multiple people. We've seen them go after Cam Higby and Nick Sorter. They pretend to jump on cars to try to pretend that they got hit by cars and stuff like that to get them in trouble. They physically throw things at them like water bottles that are frozen. You have to be very aware of what you're getting into if you go to these things in person. And so I would highly recommend that, like, everyone sign up to go to their organizing calls, listen into them online, create secret identities. I have like 15 secret identities that I use to go into these meetings all the time. And so anyone can do this, but you also have to know what you're dealing with when it comes to dealing with the left.
And it seems like the younger the groups are, the more extreme they are. At least that's what I've gotten. That's a sense I've gotten from your videos in particular. It's like you had a video recently of college students, and that was radical. And then there's high school students inside that. And of course, we've noticed this with the Tesla protests and everything else. I know we talked about this last time you were on, that the older people are the ones out there still waving signs and protesting, and the younger people aren't doing that, not because they don't believe or don't, oppose the government, but because they've given up on protesting. Is that true? And what sort of trends do you see demographically in terms of younger people being more radical or older people being disconnected with the reality of what they're involved in? How do you see the demographics of the left right now?
Yeah, so certainly on the left, there are multiple different types of people. You've got like your old hippie communists that have always been communists, but they're not really dangerous. They're kind of like harmless. They go out and they hold their signs and they chant their chants and whatever. But the younger generation, and I'm really talking about maybe like 30s and under here, they have grown up in an extreme far left environment that's been heavily influenced by the post 9/11 era, by Occupy Wall Street, and by leftist propaganda that is circulating in these far left ecosystems and communities that is much more extreme than anything the old hippie communists ever read during that kind of their tenure. And so I would say you're absolutely correct that younger people are more extreme in their thinking. And what I will also tell you is a very important trend that I've seen over the last year is an explicit rejection of non-violent protests. So
Right.
I've seen now over multiple leftist groups, they're saying the No Kings protests are great for a day, but they don't really accomplish anything because they're non-violent. We need to get more violent. We need to get more aggressive. This is what they're writing in their manifestos. And the Trump administration has only emboldened them in this aspect as well, because after Trump issued the executive order declaring them domestic terrorists, Antifa basically came out and started publishing, and they called Trump's bluff. They said, oh yeah, Trump, you want to declare us domestic terrorists? Well, we're going to come at you more aggressively. We're going to do more activism. So Antifa doubled down, and Trump never followed through on the executive order to declare them domestic terrorists. Like almost no one in Antifa has actually been arrested, even though we know exactly who they are. They're the people protesting outside the hotels. They're the people destroying things. Like, it's very, very clear based on their operational tactics who these people are, but they're not being arrested. And so every day that Trump allows this to go on, the far left is getting more emboldened to engage in destructive behavior, vandalism, violence, and they are now viewing it as part of their standard operating procedure.
Yeah, and of course that's going to happen. I mean, Trump is responding in the worst way possible. If you just don't do anything, that's one thing. But if you act tough and then don't follow through, of course you're going to embolden the people that you're, trying to fight against. And I wonder, just like, are all of these things performative from the Trump administration? Because he has this big press conference where he declares them domestic terrorists. Nothing changes. Nothing happens. Their funding isn't rounded up. The networks aren't. I mean, just nothing has happened. I think the same thing with the ADL, and Kash Patel makes this big thing saying we are no longer working with the ADL. According to the ADL, they're still working hand in glove. So it's just like they just make these announcements. Are they just blatantly lying, or are they actually doing anything? Have you heard anything that's been done against Antifa since they were declared domestic terrorists at all?
No, not a single thing. And to be honest with you, the Trump administration is lying. They're saying they're funded by these big funding sources. I'm sorry, but that's just not true. Antifa's funded by mutual aid. They fund themselves through small cash donations. And it's actually funny because when Trump made this big deal about them printing these beautiful signs, Antifa actually responded with videos showing how they print the signs on their home printers at home. Like these are
Wow.
not big funded organizations. And so it's like the Trump administration, I think, is completely unhinged from reality in terms of how the left is operating, how they're organizing. They are advancing a narrative that does not actually mirror what is going on. And so the Trump administration needs to start looking at what the far left is actually doing, because the spreading of the propaganda, the left literally makes fun of the right all the time. We're starting to see this with the left is coming out and saying, "You idiots, we're not paid protesters. We do all this for free,"
Yeah.
which is actually the truth. And until people start to accept that, then I don't know what else can be done in this situation.
Well, I would think something would be a good move. I mean, anything perhaps would be a beneficial move, because right now, I mean, Trump talk stuff. I went off for a while today about the latest post where he says, surprisingly, Jacob Frey is not going to work with ICE, even though we had a lovely conversation about it. And it's like, does he not realize the left just lies to his face and he buys it and it makes him look like an idiot? And then you've got this. Tim Walz finishes meeting with Tom Homan, demanding swift, significant reduction in immigration agents. So they're not being cowed. They're not, backing down from their demands. They're upping their demands. They're becoming more aggressive. Is there any risk, Karlyn, that an aggressive push from Trump, he declares the Insurrection Act, he sends in troops, would that not just stoke the fire? Is the left, do they want that, or are they scared of that? I can't really figure it out. What do you think, just from your taking of the temperature? Let's say Trump today goes, you know what, I've had enough, I'm sending troops in. Would that crush the protest, or would that make it spiral out of control?
I truly don't know, Harrison. And the thing of it is, I think if Trump had declared the Insurrection Act maybe a week or two ago, we would be in a much different situation than we're in now. I think potentially it could force it to spiral out of control and just get much bigger. But I also think that the only way to actually stop this is the use of overwhelming force to quell the organizing that's going on and to stop their momentum dead in the tracks. And so it's like the Trump administration, because they have ignored this problem for so long and they put it off for so long, they are now in a really difficult, almost lose-lose situation where I truly do not know how they can even get their hands around this. And this is the problem with lying to yourself about what is going on the far left, ignoring the problem, ignoring how serious it is, making fun of them, just owning the libs on Twitter. That doesn't solve actual problems. And all the time that conservatives spend doing this stuff where they're just making fun of the libs or whatever, they are wasting time and energy that they could have used to solve the problem. Again, I cannot emphasize this enough. This is not a problem that jumped up overnight. They have been doing this organizing for over a year. It started very, very small and then just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was ignored for the entire past year by the Trump administration, by conservative media, by most independent journalists. I was one of the only people covering it for months leading up to the June protests in Los Angeles. And this is what happens, folks. This is what happens when you ignore problems and you expect them to go away because you think the left is just a bunch of silly college kids that are going to grow up and get a job someday. No, they're not. They're ideologues. This is their identity. This is what they believe. And they are deeply committed to overthrowing what they believe is the capitalist United States government and abolishing the Constitution. So can we all please get our heads in the game, because things are about to get very bad if we don't.
Very powerful stuff. I absolutely agree. There's a story on Infowars, quote, "It's insurgency." Former Spec Ops soldier exposes Minneapolis, quote unquote, protest, saying what's unfolding in Minneapolis right now is not a protest. It's low-level insurgency infrastructure built by people who've clearly studied the playbook. That's the opinion of Eric Schwalm, a former Green Beret with experience in Afghanistan and Iraq. I mean, whether you want to call it a color revolution, an insurgency of some sort, clearly the ultimate goal is the overthrow of the United States. And the longer it goes on, the harder it gets to solve. I wanted to ask you about this. It was actually posted by Data Republican, but it's a post from Signalgate admin Moss, also known as Fugu, basically saying communists have a critical weakness in all of their solidarity rhetoric. Their psychology cannot handle the existence of opposing opinions, let alone spies. Just one person infiltrating breaks down all their trust in operations. If that doesn't restore agency and motivate you, I don't know what will. What's your take on that opinion, that these communist groups are vulnerable to infiltration? and disruption if you can sort of start arguments inside?
Yeah, well, generally speaking, I don't trust anything Data Republican says. I found them spreading misinformation on multiple circumstances. So I think they're a terrible source of information personally. I don't actually think that's an accurate view of how the left operates either. Listen, a lot of these leftist activists, they know each other in person. And so while it is true that sometimes you can create a little bit of infighting, it's not going to be significant enough to actually break down the whole group because this is a fun fact for people. The left actually has an entire manual about how they deal with conflict. I've seen it. It's about this thick. So they actually have ways that they deal with conflict within the group. They deal with disagreements in the group that if they do have a little bit of infighting, they tend to get over it very quickly. So I think that like you can create different infighting between different leftist groups. For example, Antifa does not like the Party for Socialism and Liberation. Revolutionary Socialists do not like the Democratic Socialists of America. They consider them to be kind of their biggest enemies because some are revolutionaries, some are reformers. It's a whole big thing I can spend hours talking about. So you can create dissension between the groups, but creating dissension in the groups oftentimes doesn't happen because these groups are they're collectivists. This is a collectivist mindset. And so they know each other in person. They just go talk to each other in person.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's very good to know. Still worth a shot. I still think it's worth a shot. I think if you want to go in and, follow the CIA's manual for simple sabotage and, I think it's, why not? Again, my guest is Karlyn Borysenko, decodetheleft.com, karlyn.substack.com. That's KARLYN.substack.com. And, of course, follow her on X. Last minute, I wish we had more time. We're going to have to get you on again, especially if these operations continue to grow. Last minute, floor is yours. What do you want people to know about what's happening in Minnesota, Minneapolis, and where it goes from here?
Yeah, I really want people to understand that we are about to see this exported nationwide. J.D. Vance was absolutely incorrect in his speech the other day when he said this is a problem that's unique to Minnesota. It's in Minnesota because Minnesota is actually where modern day Antifa in the United States began back in 1986 in the SHARP movement, which is the skinheads against racial prejudice. That became the Anti-Racist Action Network, which was a nationwide network of decentralized non-hierarchical cells that evolved into what is modern day Antifa. It started in Minnesota. That's why it's starting there, and we see so much leftist stuff there. But Antifa is currently working on exporting this all over the country. And yes, it is in red states too. This is not just a Democrat problem. This is a Republican problem as well. And until people start taking this seriously and really honing in on how the left is organizing and what they're doing, then we are totally lost.
Absolutely incredible stuff. Karlyn Borysenko, decodetheleft.com, karlyn.substack.com. The fire is rising. The longer we wait to fight it, the harder it's going to be to put out, folks. Follow her on X at Dr. Karlyn B, Dr. Karlyn B on X. Thank you, Karlyn. Amazing stuff.